Please join us as we honor and remember Dr. John Young.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We're here to gather and to remember and pay tribute to our friend, our colleague, our mentor, Dr. John Young, who passed away earlier this year in March. For those of you who knew John, he was a visionary, a friend, a mentor, a scientist, an epidemiologist, and really very fundamental to the work that we do today, and an inspiration to all of us. For those of you who didn't know John, you will hear a lot about him today, and hopefully realize what an influence he's had on all of us and the field of cancer surveillance. I'm going to turn to Dr. Kevin Ward, who's going to start us off and give some memories of John and some background. And we have some invited speakers who are going to pay tribute to John. After we go through their remarks, we're going to open it up to all of you. So please be thinking about what you'd like to say and have us remember about John and participate in this tribute, because we want to hear from all of you. Kevin?
Thank you, Betsy. I'd like to say thank you to NAACCR for the opportunity today to celebrate the life of a very dear friend, Dr. John Young. I think one of the most difficult things about this pandemic has been the impact that it has had on our lack of ability to be able to celebrate many of our loved ones' lives who have unfortunately passed during this time period. And so I'm especially grateful for this opportunity today. And I'm thankful for all of you who have come to celebrate John and to celebrate his life and the legacy that he leaves in the field of cancer surveillance. I would also like to take the opportunity today, if you'll allow me, to simultaneously celebrate the life of Linda Young as well. So Linda was John's wife. Many of you knew her. Linda passed away about 5 months prior to John. And so in August of 2020, Linda, who you can see here in this picture with John, and this is from one of their trips in Africa, Linda was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, actually a glioblastoma. And we initially thought it was just rapid onset memory loss, but she had an MRI and it was a glioblastoma, and she passed away about 2 months later. So John's life revolved around Linda, and Linda's life revolved around John. And they were honestly two of the most sincere, genuine, loving people that you could ever hope to meet. Those who were fortunate to have met them, which are many of you, I think you would say that your lives have been enriched by having a relationship with John and Linda. So due to the pandemic, John and his family actually never had a memorial service for Linda either. So if you will allow me the honor, I'd like to read just a little bit of the obituary that John himself wrote for his wife, Linda. I know that John would be very appreciative of this, and I thank you for your time to listen. Linda's life, I think, as you will hear, gives us great insight into John's life itself. They were married for over 50 years. And of course, if you're with someone for that long, you definitely have a lot in common. So Linda Young, age 79, of Snellville, Georgia, passed away Wednesday, October 14th, 2020. Born in Alexandria, Louisiana, August 16th, 1941, to Virginia Wood and Finley Tenon Jr., she was educated in schools in Louisiana and Oklahoma and was a graduate of Northwestern Classen High School in Oklahoma City. She attended Baylor University and Oklahoma Baptist University, from which she received a Bachelor's of Education degree. Following graduation, she taught school in Oklahoma City and later attended Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary, where she earned a Master's of Religious Education degree. And she attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, one of John's alma maters, where she received a Master of Childhood in Early Education degree. She established childhood daycare centers at Montrose Baptist Church and Redland Baptist Church, both in Rockville, Maryland, and served as the interim director of the children's ministries in Annistown Baptist Church, where she and John attended here in Georgia. Linda authored 4 books in the You Are Not Alone series, written for parents of children with childhood diseases. She also served as a motivational speaker for Stonecroft Ministries. In addition, she was a talented artist who over the last several years drew portraits of over 400 individuals as gifts for them and their families. She's survived by her husband of 52 years, Dr. John L. Young Jr., 4 children, John, David, Shanda, and Meredith, 14 grandchildren, a whopping 8 great-grandchildren, 1 brother, 2 stepbrothers, as well as multiple nieces and nephews. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do that. And I was fortunate in that Linda drew a picture for me. Linda had no formal training in drawing, and you have no idea what my son looks like, but this is a dead-on image of my youngest son, Liam, that she drew from a picture. So she was very talented. And as you can see, Linda was equally as talented as John was. They were a perfect couple because they were both so talented in so many different ways. So John passed away March 11th, 2021. This is a retirement picture here in the back that you can see of John from when he graduated or when he retired from Emory University. And to know John was to love John. I mean, that is the honest truth. He was just an incredible human being. He was generous. He was kind. He was courteous. He was incredibly smart. He lifted other people up. I mean, his personality just brought out the best in other people. John's CV itself reads like a small dissertation because his professional life was so impactful, as you will see. And while those aren't the things that John would want us to be talking about today as we honor him, let me just very briefly share with you a small glimmer of John's life, professional life, at a high level. So John received his bachelor's in mathematics in 1963 from Baylor University. He subsequently then received a master's of public health in biostatistics, and then a doctor of public health in biostatistics and epidemiology from the University of North Carolina. In 1963, John started his work career in the biometry department at Vanderbilt University. And he did that for 2 years. In 1965, from 65 to 69, John was with the demography section of the National Cancer Institute in the National Institutes of Health. At that same time, he started in the Public Health Service. So John was in the Commission Corps for over 23 years. And John's work over the next 50 years would lead us today to the surveillance infrastructure that we have, and is a large part of why John is often referred to as the father of cancer surveillance. From 1971 to 73, he was in the office of the chief in the biometry branch at the NCI. From 73 to 78, he was head of the demography section at the NCI. For the following 10 years, from 1978 to 1988, John was chief of the demographic analysis section at the NCI and was the director of the surveillance epidemiology and end results program. For a 2-year stint thereafter, John was the executive director of the National Tumor Registrars Association. From 89 to 1995, John and his wife moved to California with his family, where he was chief of the cancer surveillance section in the California Department of Health Services. 1996 to 98, John had a stint with the North American Association of Cancer Registries. As Gary presented to us the other day, John was actually the first president of NAACCR, and John was also instrumental in the foundation of NAACCR and the data standards that we have today. From 1998 until his retirement in 2013, John was a professor in epidemiology and the director of the Georgia Center for Cancer Statistics and PI of the registry, the SEER registry that's located in Georgia. John has countless honors on his CV that I won't go through, and was a member of pretty much every possible position in most scientific organizations related to cancer surveillance, from cancer, from the American College of Surgeons to the American Cancer Society to the American Joint Committee on Cancer. John held positions in all of these organizations. Internationally, he was involved with the International Association of Cancer Registries, where he was the general secretary for 4 years, the president for 4 years, and then served on the executive board for 4 years. And again, he was also a member of countless other organizations that I won't go into. But as you can see, along with others, John played an instrumental role in laying the foundation of cancer surveillance infrastructure that we're all a part of today. We are all deeply owe John a lot of gratitude for the work that he did. But what John would really want you to know about John are things that you can't find on a CV. It's things that you can only learn through witnessing the wonderful life that he lived for over almost 80 years. So I have put together a short, I'll try to be short, a top 10 list of the things that I have learned from John that I would like to share with you. And I'm sure many of you have learned these same things from him as well. Number 10, every now and then, visit a buffet, right? John loved to eat, right? And he loved buffets more than anything. And I honestly cannot count on both hands the number of times, even with toes, that we ate together at a buffet, for better, for worse. And John would always say, Kevin, you eat it and it goes to my waistline. And that wasn't entirely true, but we both love to eat. And with John would tell you, though, when you ask him why he loved buffets so much, it wasn't all about the food. It was about the experience, and buffets are really, as John would tell you, a wonderful place to engage in long, meaningful conversation. And I can't tell you the number of long, meaningful conversations that I have had with Dr. John Young over an Indian buffet or a Chinese buffet or various others. Number 9, eat a little chocolate. This says Dr. Chocolate. And if you knew John, you knew that John loved chocolate. And John would say, eat a little of whatever makes you happy. John's comments about eating chocolate were largely around, life is short. You have to eat things that are going to help reduce the stress that you have in life. And for John, a little sweetness from the chocolate was what he found to help to manage his stress. And this actually is John's favorite chocolate, if you just wanted to know, Frangos. So he had boxes of these constantly being ordered to his house, and he would give them as gifts to everyone because he wanted to share his love of this specific chocolate with others. So my kids and lots of others in our registry have consumed quite a bit of these chocolates as well. Number 8, do what you love and you will love what you do. And that could not be better stated through the life of John Young. This is, if you've seen one picture of John Young behind a podium, you've seen one picture of John Young behind a podium. He's been behind thousands of podiums. And this is where John had his passion. It was in teaching, and he was an amazing teacher. I would imagine many of you have probably sat through one of his courses at one point or another. And he taught all over the world. So this is just one picture as a part of an organization called MEC, the Middle East Cancer Consortium. John traveled the world, and as a part of that travel, he often predominantly did trainings of cancer registrars in principles and practices of cancer registration, surveillance, and control, a course that he had developed. Number 7, experience the world and leave it a better place than you found it. And John would often say that to me as in our travels, as we were traveling together. And again, John lived that too. He was the most engaging person you could ever imagine. And when we traveled anywhere, this was one of our MEC meetings where John was leading a group of most of the directors of the MEC registries. Wherever we went, John was idolized. I mean, no matter what country you were in, people would come up to John and want to be around him and want to engage with him, because that's just the kind of person that he was. He was so engaging and so welcoming and so encouraging to others. And he always had the best knowledge to share. And so people were always interested in gleaning that knowledge from him. Number 6, collect something. John collected a lot of things. He collected stamps, he collected articles, but I think his most precious collection was his collection of elephants. And I was fortunate to be able to get this one from him. John used these as a way of sharing his passion of animals with his children and grandchildren. And he had them all over his house. If you've ever been to John's home, you would have seen elephants everywhere. Number 5 and number 4, I'm going to group together. Have faith and live your faith. John and Linda were both Christians, and they were perfect examples of what a Christian life should be like as a couple. To say that they served would be an understatement. You know, as you heard in the obituary about Linda, she was engaged in developing a series of different programs for children at various churches. But she was also heavily involved and spent a large part of her life in writing a series of books. And this is one of those books. And this one's called, it's a You Are Not Alone series. And it's Hope for Families of Children with Cancer. And this was the first book that she wrote. And then largely dedicated it to John and all the work that he had done. But these were exceptional books. They were inspirational. They were devotional. But they were also just very helpful in terms of helpful facts and guidelines and things one might want to do as a new family member or a new parent of a child who was experiencing disease, because Linda was passionate about children. She worked with our children's hospital here in Atlanta for much of the time that they were here. They both taught Sunday school. They were in the choir. They were in numerous missions. And so their service was not only in the church setting, but as you can see from their work life, they both served in countless organizations as well. Number 3, be a purposeful listener. And so this is one of the traits of John's that I love the most. You know, so many times when we engage in interactions with one another, we're present, but we're not fully engaged in listening in the conversation. And I can honestly say this was never the case with John Young. You experienced it every time that you were with him. You felt as though he was intently listening to every word that you said, and you could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his body movement. He didn't have to say a word. You just knew he was listening, and it was an amazing trait. And I know many of my own staff in the Georgia Cancer Registry experienced this. He had an open door policy, and I would constantly hear staff in there sitting and talking to John and just letting him listen to them and sharing experiences with them. Number 2, give as you have been blessed. And to say that John and Linda lived modestly would be a huge understatement. But things were not important to John and Linda. Giving was important. They demonstrated this to their children and to their grandchildren. And I think the prime example of giving that was shown by John, when John was at end of life, he had a caregiver that had come to live with them because John wanted to stay at home. That was a choice. And this was during the pandemic. And the caregiver's family, her daughter, actually lost her job as a result of the pandemic. And she lived down in Florida, and she had multiple children. And with all that he was going through, and with his wife having just passed, John invited them, the family, the entire family, into his home to live with them. And they stayed there. They moved into bedrooms. The daughter and multiple of the caregiver's grandchildren lived with John, dined with John, and that just shows you the type of person that he truly was. And last but not least, number 1, tell people you love them. Sorry. But more importantly, show them that you love them. And I think when you look at pictures of John with his friends, this is John and Dee, you can see the love. I mean, it's evident in almost every picture that you have of someone with John. That's just the kind of person that he was. I think this is one of my favorite pictures of John and I. And this is at my doctoral graduation. And I think what I love the most about this picture is that I think John was more proud than I was on this day. And you could really just see the love in his face and in his eyes, you know. And so I think for those of you who are struggling with things today, you know, John would want you to know, and I want you to know that you're loved, and that as a surveillance community, you know, we're here for each other. And if anyone needs anything, you know, you can always reach out to me or reach out to others, because I think that's the spirit of John. I think that's the spirit that I want to try to continue on and carry on with. And so in closing, let me just say, John, I love you. And this was a phrase that John would always use as we would talk about people who have passed. And as you get older, you have more conversations about people who have passed, unfortunately. But John would say, until we meet again, and that's so true, John, until we meet again, I will be thinking about you, dear friend. So thank you.
Kevin, thank you so much. That was really powerful and heartfelt. And I think you really summed him up very, very, very well. And we appreciate that very much. I'm going to move next to Dr. Brenda Edwards, who worked with John at NCI. Many of you know Brenda. I will say that you can start raising your hand at any time so that you're in the queue to speak. So Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to say some things about John. And Kevin, I'm very glad you mentioned Linda, because she was throughout my thoughts. And also I sort of, if you'll see the pictures, I included pictures of both John and Linda, because in many ways, those were part of the fun things and shared experiences. So yes, I met John at NCI. It turns out though, we were not only colleagues, we're also friends. But one of the ways in which I was thinking about talking to mention what are my experiences is that John was always ahead of me. You know, he went before me in so many ways. He went to North Carolina before I did. He was doing registries and surveillance before I did. And in fact, if you were really technical about it, he might remind me that you never really ran a registry, Brenda. And so the point here was not critical, but just a statement about, if you will, how much I could learn from John, and I did. I also think, Kevin, you've talked about how he enjoyed life, his family, his work, and sort of other people. The other part is that somewhere in whenever I became connected with registries, more it was related to John leaving and going off to these other things where he had focused on his children and their education. But in a sense, I had to come in and learn more about registries during this transition time. But I remember, and it could be when we were getting ready for one of our celebrations for SEER, I went to John and I said, now, John, I don't know much about the history of registries, SEER, and can you just tell me share with me what I need to know. And I can't find it now because, you know, my place is always a mess in my paperwork, but John gave me a long description, if you will, the early days and how things changed. And also sort of what I think he thinks of as the future. And then we've talked about his professional work with NAACCR, IACR, and in these settings, not only was I learning from John, but also it was put in the context, if you will, of the larger purpose, if you will, of cancer registries and the work that we do. so for me, I don't really know whether he's father, grandfather, or the beginning and end of a lot of the surveillance things, but John did mentor me in many ways. I don't know that I've honored him enough over my experience, but I clearly did respect him and thank him for that. I can also admit just a little bit of, John, why would you go and sort of, if you will, encompass when he was in NAACCR and the president and other things? John, you're so inclusive with those NPR, those CDC registries. And, why are you sort of, I never said it that way, but I must tell you, John never once thought about whether you brought the label of CDC or SEER. It was their purpose, sort of what can you do to help build them? And that was sort of, I was reminded of that some years ago. I had the opportunity to visit in India and to see, they said, go see the best registries. I went to 3 cities that had registries. John's fingerprint was there because he had already been there. He had helped train them. And how do you do this? And so for me, his impact at the global arena was there long before I ever recognized it. And on one of those trips that had, as Kevin talked about, the Middle East and putting data together and publishing, he thought that was important too. And so there was a monograph put together and John was part of that. But with some brief connections with the Middle East Cancer Consortium, I happened to go over to Jordan and John would say, Brenda, you have to go to see Petra. Now, I wouldn't have thought about going there, but it is a really marvelous place. And because John's encouragement, I took a day and an English-speaking driver and went to Petra. So John's life, as much as I want to say it was a lot about the work, it was really about living life well and full. And I think he shared that in many, many ways. The other, I think I'll probably bring this to a close, but the other part, as you remember, Callum Muirs played a big role for registry, certainly in the international arena. And I'd tried multiple times, actually twice, to get Callum to come spend some time at NCI. And finally he was coming, but he had some obligations and also dealing with his own cancer treatment. And unfortunately, with his untimely death, he died before he could come. And that, if you will, introduced me to the session we had at NAACCR in Scotland, where we paid tribute to Callum. And those will be some of the pictures that I have. But I think sort of another way in which I think about that transition and that time is, in some ways, out of some of these losses and tragedies and experiences, also new things emerge. And so in some sense, John always looked at, if you will, the newness, the possibilities. You've talked a lot about his training and work there. I can never measure up to that, but he clearly was a model, and Kevin has spent much time with him there. But I'll sort of tell you one other example about John, the person. You'll see a number of pictures with Connie. She was an important person in her own right. But when Connie was in her last days or weeks of her life, I made a short trip over to Connie's apartment. I can't remember why. And what did I see? John was there with Connie. She was in her bed. They were talking about, if you will, life, work, time, shared experience. And I just can't, I mean, to me, I don't know why I would have thought it wouldn't have happened, but John came and spent time with Connie in those days. And I think that also says a lot about how he cared for friends and as well as those he worked with. And so I'll probably just sort of leave it here. You'll see, as I said, the pictures I found, many of them included, if you will, John and Linda, because as Kevin said, I experienced the fact that John and Linda was always, she was a person in her own right. She was very accomplished, but they had so much shared life together, shared faith. And so for me, I value that sort of the importance of their relationship and their caring for one another. So, and let me just, the last thing will be, I had an opportunity to sort of go with a Chinese delegation. Kevin was generous along with Louisiana to let them go to Atlanta, and he was generous again. By going there, visiting the registry, he gave me 2 wonderful visits to take me out to see Linda and John, and we went out to eat. Not sure it was a buffet, but we got to eat and visit, and I got to visit with them. And it was a wonderful visit. And I thank you, Kevin, for taking that time, because in some ways, as much as the challenges that John and Linda had in their last year or so, that's my best one of my best memories of John and Linda. And I thank you for letting me have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. Brenda touched some on John's international work, and we have a video from Dr. Roberto Zanetti from Italy speaking about John. He couldn't be here today, but he did send us a video. The audio may be a little bit faint, so listen carefully.
Good afternoon, dear American colleagues. I am Roberto Zanetti. I am speaking from Florence, Italy, and I am pleased to be virtually with you to shortly pay tribute to the life and work of John Young. I have met John at the mid of the 90s, last century, at a meeting of the International Association of Cancer Registry, of which he was the president at that time. In 2001, John approached me at the annual meeting of the association in La Habana, Cuba, proposing to offer my candidature for the role of regional representative for Europe in the board of directors of that organization. I felt honored. I accepted to run the election. I was selected, and so I started my quite long service for the NAACCR that would have lasted 2 decades to come. It included the service as president. A few years later, I was about to attend a research consortium meeting in Phoenix, Arizona, and I expressed to John my desire to stop over in Atlanta and to visit him at Emory University. John kindly encouraged me and scheduled my trip. But the trip to the United States has to be cancelled because of an emergency hospitalization of my mother. I vividly remember John's reply when I announced him my cancellation. I will remember your mother in my prayers, he said. Apart from the International Association of Cancer Registry milieu, our path crossed in at least another circumstance. More or less in the same years, John was engaged with other colleagues as Odd Anton Kalber, Brenda Edwards, and Joe Hartford in the MEC project, Middle East Cancer Consortium, a US initiative in cancer control targeting the Middle East area. I was doing something similar as European envoy and cooperator in Maghrebi area, right next door in some way, and we exchanged impressions and ideas. I believe to know well, as reader and user of the American cancer data, the extraordinary contribution assured by John in the development of the US national system, the richest, the most complete, and the most efficient at what, in my opinion. In my perspective, from my position in Europe, I believe that the role of John Young in the expansion of the SEER system has been of the same importance than the one of Harold Dorn in conceiving the program and the one of William Ansel, Sidney Cutler, and Connie Percy, among others, in building and developing it. And last, I can say that those examples have been the constant inspiration of my effort, lasted 43 years and largely unaccomplished, I am afraid, to replicate such a national and regional system in my country, Italy, and my continent, Europe. Thank you for your example, John.
So that was some words from Roberto. Now we'll turn to Dr. Thomas Tucker from the Kentucky Cancer Registry. Tom?
So thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about John. I am so grateful for the incredibly thoughtful and insightful comments from both Kevin and from Brenda, who knew him well. I have written these out because I found this an incredibly emotional experience. So I apologize for reading them, but it's probably necessary to get through this. So John Young's legacy and his contributions to cancer surveillance are truly legendary, and both Kevin and Brenda have cited some of those. But of equal and possibly even more importance has been his friendship and mentoring of so many people in the cancer surveillance community. Most of us get absorbed in our careers. Our focus is way too often on our needs and what we want to accomplish. But John truly cared about us as individuals well beyond our work life. It's that attribute of caring and that truly sets John apart. When I was thinking about the remarkable kindness that he shared, it literally brought tears to my eyes. Each of us have our own stories about the amazing man that John was. And in the interest of time, I'll briefly share mine. I first met John nearly 40 years ago at an ACCC meeting in Washington, D.C. At that point in my life, we had young kids at home. My eldest was a real challenge. In fact, I had to leave that meeting early because he was causing so much trouble at home. John saw the anguish in my face and asked what the trouble was, so I shared my circumstance with him. After that, every time I saw John Young, he never failed to ask about my son, my wife, and myself and how we were doing. John remembered and extended that same genuine concern to countless others, hundreds, maybe thousands. Over the years, I became good friends with John. He encouraged me to pursue a doctoral degree and gave me tons of encouragement. However, when I was not finishing my dissertation, he jokingly threatened to kick me in the rear if I didn't get moving. When I finally finished my dissertation, in the acknowledgement section, I thanked him for threatening me with bodily harm if I didn't finish. And it turns out that was the very best part of my dissertation. John's legacy will live on for many years, but his kindness, his friendship, and his sense of humor will be deeply missed.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. We're glad he gave you that kick in the butt, too.
I have to say one last thing. I wanted to thank both Brenda and Kevin for reminding us of Linda. I had the pleasure of staying with John a number of times. He did collect a lot of things. One time when I was there, we had to move tons of Beanie Babies out of the way. So there was a place to sleep. But I only have 2 autographed books in my library that I value greatly. One is Harper Lee's signature on a hard copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and the other one is Brenda's first book, Hope.
Thanks, Tom. I was wondering if John collected monkeys. When I first met John, one of the first memories I have of John is his son was quite young. It was before I had kids, so it was over 30 some years ago. And he told me that his son told him that what he wanted for Christmas was either a new baby brother or a monkey. I don't know, it always stuck with me. Okay, next up we have Dr. Nancy Weiss, formerly of the Texas Cancer Registry. Nancy?
Okay, thanks, Betsy. I think Kevin and Tom and Brenda both did such a great job of summarizing, and I think you will see that there was a central theme that plays throughout, and that's John's caring for others. I've known John for almost 35 years, both as a colleague, a mentor, and most importantly, as my friend. He really is one of the best folks I've ever known. His true caring for others, his willingness to help everyone, especially his cancer registry family, has been cherished by many. John's sage advice and numerous cancer registration trainings were instrumental in helping the Texas Cancer Registry achieve NAACCR Gold certification for the first time. I know he'd be thrilled that Texas has now joined the CER program. John's love for cancer surveillance in its community is well known, as is his love for food, which Kevin talked about. When he's visiting us in Austin, we frequent some of his most favorite places: Threadgill's for home cooking, Spring Hill for fried catfish, Salt Lick for barbecue, and Lamb's for his chocolate fix. We also help contribute to all of those Beanie Babies being collected in those bedrooms, Tom, because he would have to shop for all of his grandchildren whenever he was here. Having had a longtime friend like John is not only an honor, but a privilege. He truly was family, and he was the godfather of two of our puppy dogs, Zach and Corky, and who were always thrilled for whenever he visited, and he was thrilled to see them. We all look forward to every time he would spend any time in Texas, either doing some of his trainings or visiting his Texas family where his children lived. John and his wit are greatly missed, as is that grin that we all know so well. I will greatly miss my special friend, but do know that he is happy being back with his love, Linda. John, may you have the peace, comfort, and happiness you so deserve, and eat up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Next, we turn to Dr. Vivian Chen, formerly of the Louisiana Tumor Registry.
Well, thank you, Betsy and NAACCR, for hosting this tribute to John and providing the members an opportunity to talk about what John means to us. You all know and probably had heard a lot about the significant contribution that John had made to cancer registration and surveillance, both in the US and also globally. I think what I would like to share today is pretty more aligned with what Kevin had to share, is a side that I thought maybe less of you know. First, I want to share with you that John, the kicker and the enforcer. When I was a graduate student, I was very much intrigued by the National Cancer Institute, the NCI cancer mortality map, which they had showed that in southern part of Louisiana, they had one of the nation's highest cancer death rate. And I had decided at that time, I guess, coming from Hong Kong and don't like the cold weather, the Northeast, which also have very high cancer rates, I figured about I'll go to the South, and that's where I'm going to pursue my cancer career. And especially after I find out that New Orleans, which is right in the South of Louisiana, was a CER registry. So fast forward, I graduated, I had a job offer, and I moved to New Orleans. Of course, quickly I went to visit with the State Health Department where the registry is. Then I was told a bad news that the Louisiana Tumor Registry is no longer a CER registry. But why? That's why I moved down to New Orleans. Well, I was told that we were kicked out by Dr. John Young at NCI. So you see, John and I didn't really start with a very good footing, okay? So for years afterwards, I really worked very hard to find out what's the problem with the Louisiana Tumor Registry? Why are we being kicked out? And the result is that I find out John the kicker was right. The registry wasn't performing. And so I determined that, you know what? We are going to fix the registry, and the registry will strive to produce high quality data, and we did. Years later, our data finally passed John's test of purification by data use. And more than a couple of decades later, the Louisiana Tumor Registry became a CER registry again. And I think John the Kicker has something to do about that. Also, the second one that I want to share is that John is a humorist. And Kevin was right. John loved to talk and behind a podium. He loved to give presentation. And not only that he loved to give presentation, he loved to include jokes in his presentation. And for those who have been there listening, everyone attending the conference and the meeting will be laughing, and you can hear Lilia's laugh and Mary Potts laugh in the audience. And everyone is laughing except one innocent Chinese girl who sit there and she just didn't get it. Finally, I had to ask my colleague, well, what's the joke? Why is everyone laughing? And she finally told me, Vivian, if I have to explain the joke to you, it's no longer funny. So I determined, okay, John, I will have to learn what your joke is all about. And years later, I think I finally get most of it. I still don't get all John's jokes, okay? But I have learned that cancer registration is hard work. There's a lot of serious stuff. But you know what? Sometimes some fun is okay. Some jokes and some humor is okay. And life is more joyous if you can laugh at yourself. So I appreciate John, the humorist, and the joker. John was also a very skilled juggler, but he also is very good in catching every one of those because he has a very balanced life. We know that John's work required him on the road a lot, not only just domestically, but all over the world. But when he was not traveling, he's always involved in a lot more non-work activities. As Kevin had mentioned, that she was very active at church. And even at the time that when I get to know John better, we resolved John the Kicker issue. We become friends and good colleagues. And he was still teaching a Sunday school class. Not only John loved buffets and eating, John was a wonderful cook. And I guess if someone was a good cook, they have to love eating too. And I think John knows how to enjoy that part of life. When suitable, John will always want Linda to share the part of his life with him. And so he would take Linda to the IACC conference sometimes, and they would enjoy some of the post-conference trip, whether it was in Africa or in India. I have been with them and see how they could enjoy life and not just hardworking, okay? John also stopped to smell roses sometimes, and at one point, he had brought his family, well, not his son, I think the two daughters and Linda, to our Mississippi farm for a weekend. And Lyndon and I share both our roots in Louisiana and also in Oklahoma, where I went to school, and Linda had been in school over there. And Linda was born from Louisiana. So they came and they visited the barns, they saw the cows, and John even drive a tractor. And I hope that you will see some of the photos that we're showing later. And he's a pretty good tractor driver. John also played pianos, and he had a wonderful voice and sings beautifully too. And when he was staying over there in Mississippi, he ended up playing the piano for that Sunday service at a very small country church. In addition, it had been mentioned that John was also a family man. And for those of us who are lucky to receive John's annual Christmas letter, you know what a family man that he was. Despite of the large number of extended family members, kids, grandkids, step-brother siblings, and great-grandkids, John was always a part of their life. And he was always there for his family. And he is a wonderful and great supporter for Linda. As it had mentioned about Linda, was very much involved in the hospitals, children's hospitals. And of course, he was always very proud of Linda's book series on You Are Not Alone. And I'm also very fortunate to have an autograph of Linda's first book on hope for families of children with cancer. Subsequently, Linda also published the other book on congenital heart defects and also the children with autistic spectrum. When Linda died unexpectedly last year in 2020, I think John had lost his desire to fight for his health issues, and he went to join with Linda that he looked very much forward to joining her. Lastly, I will be remiss if I don't mention about John, the one that we all know very well. Despite of his very busy schedules and wearing multiple hats, deep down, John was a very generous mentor and very supportive colleague. He gave me good advice when I become the NAACCR president, panicking about how I'm going to deal with this bunch of colleagues, sometimes who go very wild. He gave good guidance and helped me survive the 2 years of presidency there. He contributes significantly to the IACCR Cancer in 5 Continents monograph, and he was always there to lend a hand to any registry who needed assistance, regardless of how busy that he is. So John, I would miss your joke. I will miss your Christmas letter, but I think your legacy lives on. Your dedication to cancer surveillance, your expectation of high quality work, and your generosity and caring to others. I'm glad that our life paths cross. I would remember your wisdom of having a balanced life with appropriate priorities. Have fun sometimes, have a sense of humor. Don't always have to be dragon lady all the time. I could be a teddy bear at times. And it's okay to laugh at ourselves, at yourself. John, I miss you very much, and we all love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. You know, you reminded me of perhaps one of my most embarrassing professional moments. And it is a time that I can laugh at myself. It was at the NAACCR meeting in Canada, and I'm not sure which city, but we were definitely in Canada, and I had the job of thanking the sponsors of the NAACCR meeting. And I was up there and I said, well, I'd like to thank, you know, the Canadian Council of Cancer Registries, and I'd like to thank the CDC, and I'd especially like to spank. And I stopped dead because I heard myself what I'd said, and I said the NCI, and it was just complete silence. And then I hear this guffaw, this burst of laughter from John Young. He just lost it, and then the whole audience started laughing at me. And ever since that, Jane Braun has called me Spanky. So with that, I turn it over to Jane.
Thanks, Betsy. And just wanted to thank all the speakers and friends who went before me, talking about John and how he was a mentor to everyone in the world in the cancer registry profession, how he was a friend, how he showed us integrity, how he showed us all kinds of things. And I just had a couple quick stories to talk about his kindness and his sense of humor. And John knew that I had a fondness for donuts. And so whenever we had meetings in Atlanta, he would swing by Krispy Kreme and grab a bag, and then he'd come by wherever I was sitting and slip me this little white bag of Krispy Kremes under the table. And, you know, we always said everybody from NAACCR's middle name is From. So we talk about, you know, Maria from New York and Nancy from Texas and everything like that. But in my family, he was just known as Donut Man. And I was telling the story about how he used to slip me donuts at the meetings right after he died, when a few of us had a Zoom call together. And Nancy Weiss said, oh yeah, he brought me donuts too. And I think that that's part of the thing that we all thought we were his favorite. And that's what John could do. He could make everybody feel like you were the special one of all the people he mentored, all the friends he had. And I'm also thinking of one of the meetings that I went to, and this was back in the days when we used overheads. It was the pre-PowerPoint days. And there was a speaker who was speaking for his very first time at a national conference, was nervous, was trying to juggle the microphone and get his overheads and was getting flustered. And John just got up, ran over there, put a chair next to the overhead machine, took the overheads from the person and just took all his overheads and ran them for him and helped the person calm down and do a nice presentation. And, you know, it was exemplary of the leadership of NAACCR of helping your colleagues out, the kindness, and anybody in the organization would help you out. And John just exemplified that, and he was so kind. And then the last one was in Niagara on the Lake, which was my very first meeting. And they used to have the tumor registry training program for 3 days before the meeting started. And I was in that training program because I'd only been in the registry field about 6 weeks at the time. And John was teaching with Tom Tucker. And at one point he wanted to keep talking a little bit, but he was worried about the clock. And he just said, "Tom, do you think we can do this?" And Tom looked at me, he said, "You're in good shape." And John just started laughing. He said, "It's the first time in my life anyone ever told me I was in good shape." And so he was just a funny guy who could laugh at himself too. I think about with John and Linda both, they were incredible experts at what they did. They were kind, they were our mentors, and more than anything, they were our friends, and I'll miss them both dearly. It was an honor to know them both.
Thanks, Jane. I have two statements from people who couldn't be here, and then we're going to open up the mic. So get ready, everybody, and raise your hand. Your hand is a yellow marker down at the bottom of your screen, and Venue West and Jim Hofferkamp will be there to call on you after I read my two statements. The first one is from Lilia O'Connor. Many of you remember Lilia from California. She says, she's sorry she can't be here. "I will not forget you. You are an inspiring person, dedicated to your profession and a wonderful, supportive individual. You inspired me to go further with my education. I remembered that every time you came for a site visit, you made a point to have a chat with me. When I expressed any frustration with work, you were there to listen to me. In the beginning, my frustration centered around my inexperience in managing staff and not understanding the financial aspects of the registry. I told you of my desire to further my education, but financial and family obligations prevented this pursuit. Eventually I did, and you were so happy for me. Our conversations then turned to what classes I was taking and your ongoing encouragement to continue pursuing my goal. You were also instrumental in my coming back to work in the cancer registry after I completed my MBA and worked elsewhere for a while. You said to me, "Once you get the cancer registry in your blood, it stays." My personal experience is a small example of how much you contributed to our humanity and the continuing progress of work in improving cancer treatment and survival in our world. You will always be remembered for all your international and national accomplishments, in addition to your personal influence to individuals like me. Thank you, John. Lilia. I think we see some themes here. His dedication to education, encouraging us all to further our educations, listening, and just being a great friend. So lastly, I have something from Bill Wright. You'll remember Bill from California, Director of California Registry. "Dear friends, others will enumerate John's many accomplishments far better than I could. So instead, I would like to send a letter of thanks to John. Dear John, thank you for being such a large swath of thread in the fabric of our lives. Thank you for teaching us the detailed topography of cancer registration that Connie Percy taught you and the reasons why it is so important. Thank you for having the foresight to bring all of California into the California Cancer Registry. Thank you for seeing the need for establishing NAACCR and playing such an important role in its founding. Thank you for leading a team of us to establish the California Teacher Study. But most of all, thank you for being my and our friend. John, I would like to offer a short prayer from a beautiful book that my sister-in-law sent Maria and me shortly after my mother-in-law passed, which I read for comfort. It is from the book entitled The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. The boy asks, "What do we do when our hearts hurt?" And the mole replies, "We wrap them with friendship, shared tears and time, till they wake hopeful and happy again." John, know that we will wake hopeful and happy again. Be at peace. Love, Bill. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you for all of your really kind words and thoughts and memories of John. It's been nice to be able to share these moments together and hear stories of our friend. So, Jim, do you have any hands raised there? Anyone who would like to talk?
Jill has had her hand up for quite a while.
All right, Jill. Jill, are you unmuted yet? Looks like you are.
Maybe we can go to Teresa while Jill gets her audio issues worked out.
Okay.
Teresa? Should we try D?
Yes,
There he is.
here I am. Well, thank you for organizing this. It's been nice to see everybody that I haven't seen for a long time, and to summarize much of what I was going to say today as well. I wanted to point out from Kevin's that John only occupied these leadership positions throughout the world and in California and the NAACCR program, but he was a leader. It wasn't just a position, it was a leader. So if you look at the NAACCR program, for example, many of you may not know, but NAACCR was a combination of 3 programs: surveillance, epidemiology, and end results, and put into one program. Also before NAACCR, we had national cancer surveys. So about every 5 or 10 years, they would do a survey. And then I think everybody said, well, you know, it takes so much to put all these together. Why don't we continue in a program that would monitor this every year over time? In California, John did come out. We've just started a cancer registry with 10 regional registries and brought a lot of order to bring those groups together and making a smooth transition to a statewide registry. So then in addition, one of the things I remember about John in terms of his leadership and training was standards. I think it was John that put together all the committees at NAACCR. When I took over as president from him, he said, these are the committees that you need to focus on, and this is what their mission is. And it was that led me to really develop some goals and things like that for the institution. But he's also involved in standards. He invited me to come to a meeting in Lyon, France, when he's putting together the Middle East Cancer Consortium. I was president of NAACCR at that time, but he wanted me to come and demonstrate the manuals we had created at NAACCR as a model of the kinds of things they should be doing at the Middle East Cancer Consortium. I also wanted to mention that John had a lot. Don Austin, who's head of the registry in California, invited me to chair a committee that reviewed the applications to lead the regional registry. So a number of people would put in an application. John was on that committee. We had a meeting in Santa Barbara, and I got a call, I think it was from Linda, saying, I'm not sure John's going to be able to come. He's not feeling well. And so I talked to John. He says, well, you know, I'd like to come, but well, my dog went out on the poison ivy, and then I petted the dog, and so I'm not feeling very well. But anyway, he got on the plane anyway, and when he arrived, his legs was about the size of an elephant's leg. But he made that trip. He could hardly walk, but he was committed to come do what he had agreed to be doing. So this was another good quality of John that was really worth emulating and following in his leadership. So like everybody else, John was a very good friend. He was very committed to his job. John, you might remember, had a degree in public health and biostatistics. He didn't have a degree in pathology or things of that nature that related to a lot of things we deal with in registries, but he somehow learned that. John invited me to come to him in a trip to Turkey to see whether or not Turkey could develop a cancer registry. So I went with him. We went to a hospital, and John wanted to see some records. So they pulled the records. John took a look at them. Now, these were not in English. And John could spot some of the areas where they needed to improve. I don't know how he did that. But I also remember when John was, when I was in Utah particularly, John used to come out and visit the registries every year. And we'd always kind of panic about that because John would always look at our records and find something that we had overlooked. Again, I don't know how he did that in a very friendly tone, but it was something he was very interested in, was quality and standards. And I think that's throughout the world of cancer registries, those things are continuing on. So just in summary, I'd like to express my love for John. He brought a lot of good experiences and advice to me and to Beverly and his wife, Linda. We did several things together and traveled to some of the international meetings. And John is going to be very much missed. And he was very close to John and really missed every day. So thank you for organizing this, Betsy, and for all of you who participated.
Thanks, Jim. Can you move on and call on the others? I can't see the hands. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Give Jill a try next. Jill,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. First off, thank you all so much for organizing this. I've got a number of stories, but I wanted to start with the one that as soon as I started my career, in 1980, actually, I was 3, by the way. So in 81, I was invited, thanks to John, to a SEER meeting. So I didn't know anything about cancer. My background was in databases, but I was able to go there to the SEER meeting, but sadly my plane was a bit late. So I walked into the meeting very late and I quietly sat in the back. John looks up, sees me, stops the meeting. He introduces me to the entire group. I mean, the dignitaries, I think Dean West was there, all of our professionals and mentors. He made me feel so welcome. He made me feel so special and important. And to Kevin's point earlier, like family. And like so many of my colleagues in NAACCR since 1980, I've learned a lot from you. One, how to be a cancer professional, how to be a professional, period. And I just wanted to take this moment to share that one story with you about John, because I didn't know ICDO from ABCs. You know, I finally at some point I had understood that metastasis meant to spread. You know, I figured, you know, those things out on the fly. So thank you all for having this and for allowing me to share one little thing that's still very, very special to me.
All right, thank you, Jill. I think up next we have Teresa.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. So I've been enjoying everyone. And as we look at the pictures, you can't help but remember his beautiful, warm smile. So I have a couple of special good memories. One was my last day of chemo. It was also the last day John was going to be working there. It was his retirement day. And so, you know, he was packing up everything, but he took the time to take a picture with me. Kevin took that picture of us. So that was a great, you know, memory there. And another was when I, you know, a couple of years later, when I graduated from Emory School of Nursing and sent the picture to John. And he, you know, in addition to his commendation, he also said, yes, you're one of my 3 favorite nurses. And that's when he told me that his daughter was also a nurse. So of course, I'm sure she was number 1. And he told me who the other one was too. So that's all I wanted to share. And I loved him very much.
Thank you, Teresa. Next we have Hannah Weir. Not sure if Hannah's microphone is working. Tell you what, while we wait for Hannah, why don't we try Winnie? Winnie Rochelle?
Hi. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's spoken. So heartfelt, and what a tribute and honor. I just want to mention a couple of things with my own experience, regarding my own experience with John Young. During John Young's stay here in California, he was my installing officer when I became president of the California Cancer Registrars Association. I was working at a community hospital at the time. Things were kind of somber in California back then. There were some funding issues and struggles with potential layoffs at the state registry at the time. So the mood at the conference at the time was a little bit somber because, you know, things were uncertain. To add to that, we had something going on before reality TV ever crept in, known as the Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill hearings, right? That was happening during this conference. So everyone was just riveted watching television, knowing one of these 2 people was lying, right? And who is the liar and who's telling the truth. So there was very little really focus on this conference at the time for all of those reasons. Well, John being John, just took control of that whole situation. And as others have stated, he made people feel so special. He made sure that that moment was special for me. He just put a whole different spin on that environment and that event. And that just showed, you know, the type of man he was, and that legacy that he leaves. So no matter what is happening around you, you put on that face, you turn it around, and you make those people around you feel like they're the only things that matter. That was my takeaway from that whole event. The other thing, as others have said, you know, John was this world-renowned, knowledgeable expert, right? But the other side of John was the most humble person ever, right? Again, during his stay here, we Californians decided to do a little tongue-in-cheek show at the upcoming NCRA conference that we were hosting that year, a little satirical fashion show based on registry operations. This was led by April Fritz. So can you imagine the ideas and thoughts that were being generated at the time, right? We asked John if he would be willing to participate in this satirical fashion show. not only did a man of his caliber and just, infamy accept that, he donned a tutu. Yes, a tutu for this event. That to me just said it all. He was the most humble, gracious, kind person ever. And those two events just kind of encapsulated to me the man he was, the person we should all aspire to become. So thank you for this opportunity. Rest in peace, John. Thank you all.
And Winnie, you better submit that photo to the newsletter of John
I'm
and the
still looking
tutu.
for it. I'm still
Okay.
looking for it. Absolutely. Thanks.
I think we're still having problems with Hannah. The only other hand left up would be Wendy Sharber. Wendy, are you there? Wendy, it looks like you're on mute. Betsy, it looks like Hannah and Wendy are both having problems with their microphones.
Jim, can you unmute them?
No, they're
And Kat,
unmuted.
is Kat here?
Yeah, it's not a problem on their end. It's just the audio's not coming through.
Okay. Well, I would suggest then that Wendy and Hannah, please write to us and give us your thoughts. We'll put them in the newsletter. And anyone else who would like to add some words, if you send them to me or to Chandrika. I know Chandrika just put out a message for the newsletter. Send your thoughts in and we will run a little column in the newsletter to close this out. But I really thank you all for staying long. There are over 200 people still here with us. I think, which is a testament to how much John was loved by all of us. And he will remain dear in our hearts. Tyler, can you advance the rest of the slides while we're closing up? There are the slides of John's visit to Vivian's farm, I think. And there we have the triumvirate, Connie Percy, Evelyn Shambow, and John. And that, you notice, was in Bally's Casino. I don't know if you realize that, but I can't imagine Connie playing the slots, but probably more that than poker. And here are some slides of Linda and John there, and Connie and John, and the next one up.
Good
Some
one.
good ones there.
Oh, wow.
And that one.
Mhm.
And I think that's it. So thank you all very much. No more hands, Jim?
No more hands.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for all the words and heartfelt memories of John. He'll always be in our hearts. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy.
Here.